Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Steven de Bakker. I'm the founder and CEO of Afriwise, and I'll be your host today for my sins. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to this online event where we officially unveil a brand new research report on the evolving role of General Counsel in Africa. The report, which is entitled On the Horizon, a 2025 African GC Perspective, is a result of a collaboration, as you can see the logos on top, of a collaboration between the African Corporate and Government Council Forum, better known as the ACGC, and Afriwise, which is Africa's legal data company. I would like to start by sincerely thanking our partners at ACGC, all the legal professionals across the African continent who contributed to this research, and of course our expert speakers of today. And I also want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today, whether you're dialing in from across the continent or beyond. Your presence here underscores the importance of the discussions we're about to have. And it's also a testament to the growing recognition of the critical role that in-house counsel play in shaping business strategy, navigating regulatory complexity, and ensuring corporate resilience across Africa. Why this report? Well, as legal professionals, we rely on data to drive decisions. Yet, as we all know, there is still too little structured research that truly captures the realities of in-house legal teams across Africa. In other parts of the world, GCs have access to regular industry reports, benchmarks, comparative insights. But on our continent, we often operate from a legal perspective in a vacuum, making it harder to assess where we stand as a legal department and where we should be going. And that's precisely why this report is so important. It provides in-house counsel with a critical benchmarking tool. You will see it will allow you to compare your priorities, your challenges, your strategies with those of your peers across the continent. The report answers key questions such as, are my biggest challenges the same as those of my peers in other industries and other regions? Am I investing in the right skills and technologies to future-proof my legal department? How are other GCs managing regulatory complexity, budget constraints, a big one, and expanding responsibilities? And what are the key disruptors shaping the in-house legal function in Africa, and how do I prepare for them? But as you will see the report is not just about numbers and hard data. It is also packed with insights from top general counsel across our dear continent. Those general counsels share these perspectives on how they are adapting to change, how they overcome challenges, and how they position themselves within the company as strategic business leaders. And having seen the report now, I've read it 3 times in the past few days, I must say that first-hand experience makes the report an invaluable resource, not just for understanding where we are today, but shaping the future of the in-house legal counsel. What we'll do in the next hour is breaking down some of these insights, hear from experts, and explore how you can use this data to make informed strategic decisions within your own legal teams. Now, before we dive into the discussions, allow me to quickly go over how we're going to run this session. I'll be introducing each speaker one by one just before their segment, and we'll give you a bit of background on the expertise and the topic they will be covering. A quick reminder for all the speakers, please keep your remarks. You will have noticed that I'm talking quite fast. Please keep your remarks within your allocated time. We have a packed agenda, and we want to ensure that every topic gets the attention it deserves, while hopefully leaving some room for discussion. So if you see me reappearing on screen, that's your cue to start wrapping up. If the audience has any questions, please do use the chat or the Q&A function. We won't be addressing questions immediately during each presentation, but if time allows, we will address any questions at the end, and I'm pretty sure there will be questions. So without further ado, let's get started. Our very first speaker of today is Jessica Knight. Jess is the head of marketing at Afriwise. Jess has spent a lot of time and effort. She's been project managing this report over the past few months. And Jess will set the scene by taking us through the background and methodology of this research. Jess, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you all for joining us. This has been a really long project in the making and very important. And I think as AfriWise, one of our key objectives for the year was bringing people from complexity to clarity. And as part of that, we really wanted to map the local perspective of legal professionals, especially our in-house professionals, as we haven't really seen anything done like this before. So with that being said, what we wanted to achieve with this report was something that was expansive, something that covered the continent, but something that also gave us a very detailed view of what legal professionals were facing. So this report is derived from a survey, and a very extensive survey that we conducted with 35 key questions. And those key questions were split up into 7 sections, those sections being professional background and demographics, strategic focus areas and priorities, regional operations and regulatory strategy, future skills and professional development, legal development operations and well-being, organization and financial overviews, and engaging with external counsel. So you'll see further into the report how we've structured it and how we've broken it up, but that was from the survey perspective, how we structured that for respondents. We had 130 respondents, which you can see from the map that we've gained perspectives from over 41 African countries. Something of note is that at least a third of the respondents operated across multiple jurisdictions and were not siloed to a single jurisdiction. We then had 21 expert commentators who analysed the results of the research and provide their local legal expertise in that regard. So this culminated in 60 pages of content, which seems like a lot, but it is a resource for you to use it whatever way you see fit. We've broken it up really well, so it's something that you can really take time to delve into. The focus of the report was generally targeted towards general counsel, but you can see from the breakup that we have an array of respondents, as well as respondents wearing multiple hats, and you'll see that as a theme throughout the report. Then moving on to accessing the report. So both AfriWise and ACGC have made this report available for everyone. So if you want to, you can scan either of the QR codes and access the report, or we will put the link for the access to the report in the chat function. Or you can just copy the link that you see below. Then moving on to navigating the report. So we really tried to make it as interactive as possible. So you'll see that we have page turn interactivity. We also have section links. So you'll see the report is divided into its sections, and you can navigate directly to that section if you want to. And then we have subsection links. So anytime that you need to navigate back to the table of contents, you can click the bookmark and it will take you straight there. And then you can go into the subsection and choose whatever subsection you want to navigate to, and you can have a scroll through there. We then also have links on our section dividers. So every time you get to a new section, you can navigate to the specific section that is of interest to you, and you can see the results from that question. And once again, if you need to make it back to the table of contents, you can just go to the bookmark that is in the report. So from my perspective, in terms of accessing the report, that is it from me. Stephen, you're welcome to introduce the first speaker.
Great. Thank you so much, Jess. Next, we'll hear from our partner, Cynthia Lareine. Cynthia is the director and co-founder of the African Corporate and Government Counsel Forum, the ACGC. But Cynthia is also, I think for many people in the audience will know Cynthia, the founder of Lareine Gold Consulting. Cynthia's deep understanding of the African legal landscape, combined with her unique expertise in marketing professional services, makes her the perfect person to provide the ACGC perspective to this report. Cynthia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. I'm excited, really thrilled to be able to share the unique perspective of ACGC on this landmark survey. So years ago, I was personally very struck by the glaring omission in international surveys. Our in-house counsel in Africa seemed consistently underrepresented. Many of you will be aware that there are a myriad of international GC surveys, but the voices of in-house counsel in Africa within those research projects seemed notably absent despite the size and scale of the African in-house legal fraternity. And I remember personally writing to countless organizations who will remain nameless, asking for the African in-house counsel perspective to be included and reflected. And one thing I observed was that, you know, people were sort of interested, maybe not so much, but, you know, there wasn't really an acknowledgement that this was even an oversight. And so that really troubled me. Anyone that knows me knows that once I get a bee in my bonnet about something, I'm going to try and solve for it. So motivated by this observation and driven by the robust community that myself and Nankunda have been building at ACGC for the last 7 years or so, it's been a long-held aspiration to try and bridge this gap, to ensure that the African voice within in-house legal is reflected in a report such as this one. So I'm really proud of the partnership that we've developed with Afriwise, and quietly satisfied that this partnership has now culminated in this first of its kind survey conducted across the continent. The truth is, this is not just about data, although the data is rich and compelling. This isn't just about statistics. It's really about taking a moment to take the pulse of our in-house legal community. And it's about providing African in-house lawyers a really important opportunity to share their realities, their challenges, and their insights. It's also about accurately reflecting the evolving roles and challenges that our in-house counsel are experiencing. We've gathered some really important insights into how the crucial role of in-house legal is not just about managing, but also driving strategic direction within major corporates and government offices across the continent. These roles are expanding. That's the truth. They're becoming more integral to the organizations. They're becoming much more strategic. And unsurprisingly, as many of you can attest, they are becoming increasingly more demanding. The power of the ACGC community has been instrumental in achieving the breadth and depth of this survey. And I must take a moment to say a huge thanks to all of our members who actively participated in the survey, and our commentators who took time to then review the findings and provide the detailed commentary on what the stats were telling us. I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've done. And I have to say that I was really surprised by the engagement and participation. We kicked this off believing that it would be worthwhile, but I was truly astounded by just the way people got on board and took the time to fill in this really extensive survey. I just want to call out one or two key findings, if I might, things that stood out to me. So a staggering 60%, or almost 60%, so about 56% of respondents identified increasing regulatory demands as being their top challenge, underscoring the need for adept navigation through our diverse legal landscape in Africa. This, to me, highlights the urgent need for in-house counsel, not only to enhance regulatory knowledge and skills, but also to strategically influence business planning and resource allocation. And it really signals that there's also a growing demand for things like specialized government regulatory affairs roles within organizations, as our in-house counsel in Africa is seeking to influence and shape policies that directly impact business operations across the continent. As you read the report, you will find many such insights. I'm going to stop there, but really in closing, I just want to say that I really look forward to hearing people's feedback once they finally review the report. I anticipate the content from the report as being both a mirror and a map. A mirror that reflects the current landscape with real authenticity and depth, and a map that helps us chart a course forward, helping us to anticipate the future of the legal practice across Africa. Huge thanks to Afriwise, all of the hard work that's been done. Huge thanks to our team at ACGC. And with that said, I will hand back to Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And at the risk of actually making Jess angry, but I hope this is the first of many, and every year we can do a finger on the pulse. But it's been indeed a great collaboration, and thankful to everyone who participated. But now let's maybe move to the in-house legal community in Africa itself to hear some of their practical insights and findings and what they how they consider some of these findings. As you all know, general counsels today wear multiple hats, and with that comes increased pressure. Pat Mbugua, head of legal at Standard Chartered Bank Kenya, has over 20 years of experience in the financial services sector. And as we all know, that's not one of the easiest sectors to be active in from a legal perspective. But Pat has also been recognized as a strategic business enabler. Now, very important, inspired by her passion for community impact, Pat volunteers as a mentor, but is also, very interesting, a certified mental health first aider. So all of this makes her extremely well placed to address what has really come out as from this report, the growing demands on GCs, the mental health, and the well-being implications of this all. Pat, welcome to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And a big thank you to Afriwise and ACGC for collaborating on this project. I remember when we first had conversations with the co-founders, and I remember a chat with Nankunda, who will be speaking later. One of the areas of great concern was the mental health impact on legal professionals. I think we've observed the news in various platforms across the world. Actually, it's not peculiar to African GCs and legal departments and legal counsel. It's a global problem that advocates are increasingly, or lawyers or attorneys, whatever the case may be, are increasingly under great amount of stress. And as you'll see from the slide that has been projected very kindly by Afriwise, there is increased pressure. There's work-related anxiety, there's increased stress levels, there's increased workload. The departments are understaffed. I think that's a common refrain amongst legal counsel in Africa whenever we meet up. We can never have enough resources. There is higher workload. And as my colleagues, and I'm very grateful that my colleagues across public and private sector contributed to commentary on this. A shout out to Yewande from the public sector space in Nigeria. We also had Zainab from the private sector here in Kenya, and we also had Daphne from Uganda. So there was consistent commentary. Yes, some variances across public and private sector, but there was consistent commentary around the levels of stress. And if I can just call out one statistic, perhaps not surprisingly, but there is a concern that over half of the respondents of the survey said that they registered increased work-related anxiety and stress levels. And the recurring themes are what we've just walked through. So it's quite interesting because over the last 2 years at our annual ACGC conferences, we had one in Kigali and the most recent one was in Accra. Well-being was something that we gave some focus, especially during our breakout sessions where we could bring our legal counsel together in a room to discuss in a very safe space concerns around professional well-being and mental health generally, and what we can do about it, because it's one thing to discuss it, but also hopefully the outcome of this report on very many areas, but particularly for me, the passion here on mental health is what are we gonna do about it? Let's be the change that we want to see. So I will reflect a little on the breakout session we had last year in Accra, where we were trying to unpack the blind spots, the organizational blind spots that could impact professional well-being. And it was a very robust discussion. One of the things that we talked, of course, without divulging the rich confidential insights, but one of the recurring themes was that at a higher level, executive management may not be privy to what is happening on the ground. So they may not be and to use the word that has been used here today, pulse. They might not be very clear on the pulse on the ground. And so I think we serve a very instrumental role, or we could play a very instrumental role in elevating. The counter of a blind spot is awareness, elevating organizational awareness on what is impacting teams on the ground. And it doesn't have to be restricted to legal departments. Of course, we can start, charity begins at home, with our own teams. But if we increasingly have open conversations with colleagues about what may be causing stress, then we become the solutions in terms of how we could deal with that stress. It starts with awareness, and then the solutions are then provided. So, and we may think that this is, I think for a very long time, this has been associated as being a soft issue, mental health concerns, but it actually is good business. Well-being is good business, and it actually contributes to productivity. And I want to call out the World Economic Forum 2020 report, which actually highlighted and predicted that in 5 years, hello 2025, we're here, had predicted that the top skills, some of the top 10 top skills that would be highly sought after, would include resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. So it actually then becomes a commercial imperative that we get the right level of mental health, not only in our legal teams, but across the organization. So there are lots more insights in the survey and the report that has been beautifully put together. I am very excited about how it all came together, and I'm hoping that our colleagues will dig into the insights that have been displayed, have thoughtful reflections about how we can increase that awareness about what is causing this very high levels of stress, what are the nuances across public and private sector that we need to be mindful of, and how we can, as a very strategic enabler, as you know, Stephen alluded to in my profile, I believe we all are strategic enablers of our businesses, how we can make this upfront and center as a subject that should be tackled in the organizations that we represent and that we serve. So looking forward to more conversations around this very important topic. Back to you, Stephen.
Thank you so much, Pat. Anxiety and stress, mental health and well-being. I'm convinced that's going to be one of the key topics for the future. The next speaker is actually an ex-colleague of mine. We need to go 15 years back, Anastasia, if I'm not mistaken. We were both in practice at the time. We're not in practice anymore. If I'm not mistaken, Anastasia went from practice, then moved in-house, then back to practice, and eventually back in-house at ACGC. So you will be able to compare the stress levels at both sides. Anastasia is currently the regional head of legal, not just for Africa, but for Africa, Middle East, and Asia at AGECO, and has extensive experience across challenging sectors such as energy, infrastructure, and financial services. So I think that kind of impressive experience gives her some unique insight into what the key disruptors are that are reshaping the legal functions and how GCs can actually proactively address these challenges. Anastasia, it's a pleasure to welcome you.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to speak to you all today. It's been great to participate in this report. I was tasked with having a look at the results of this survey on the largest disruptive factors within the legal department or the GC role. And I must say that I do tend to agree with most of them, and I'll give some feedback, I guess, per topic. Before I start, just Greco as a business, we're a global energy solutions provider, and we actually operate over 80 countries across the world. And as Stephen mentioned, I cover Africa, Middle East, and Asia. And across Africa, I look after over 30 countries. So it's a lot of ground to cover and a lot of nuances in different jurisdictions. So in terms of the first item that's listed, I guess, as the most noted disruptor being economic instability, I think that affects any business, regardless of sector or location. You do want to be operating in sort of a economically secure environment. For Agreco, being largely an emergency energy provider, although we do work on larger projects, we do operate in economically fragile environments just by the nature of the work that we do. And to some degree, we do anticipate and build that into our operating model. But naturally, it is going to affect the way that we make business decisions. We want to be in jurisdictions where we can both secure our revenue as well as extract it. So the last 12 months have been a little bit wobbly, and I think that that's echoed across different industries. I don't think it necessarily has disrupted my team specifically, but certainly a business as a whole, it is very topical for us. Then the next two I actually would say, and I think Cynthia mentioned earlier, being the largest disruptors to specifically for my team and our sector, but regulatory and political change, which often come hand in hand, have been enormously disruptive, and over the last 12 months, and I anticipate will be forevermore across the continent. We do find that a lot of the environments where we work in, the governments are leveraging regulatory change to maximize or enhance domestic benefits. One really good example of that would be local content requirements. So local ownership within an offshore business or a foreign business that wants to operate in country. And it's those kind of imposed changes, whether it be under a new government regime or just a change in view on foreign operations in country, they are critical to the decisions that our businesses make. We need to stay ahead of that. We need to anticipate what's coming, what changes are over the horizon, and communicate that to the business in order for the business to make the right decision on what do we do? Do we adapt and do we conform and comply because we want to stay in country? Or is it too risky? Is it too unstable? Is it too onerous in terms of what the requirements have become? And we may look to extract our fleet and our operations from the country. So again, regulatory political change, really, really topical. We've seen over the last 12 months, it's almost month to month in some jurisdictions, very unsettling and very critical for the business to focus on. And my team is critical in sort of staying ahead of what's coming, with tools like Afriwise being super helpful, getting the daily alerts across the jurisdictions where we operate, and then we can delve deeper into a particular topic if we believe it's going to affect our business in that country. So those two for me would be at the top, ahead of economic instability, but I guess they kind of all work hand in hand to some degree. On operational downsizing, I know it has affected, and I guess it's a knock-on effect also, probably some delayed response or ongoing response from the likes of COVID and political changes. We have been lucky enough as a business not to really be affected. We have restructured over the last couple of years, but my team, in fact, has grown. I actually joined about a year ago, and our group is growing. So we haven't been affected so much, but we have seen businesses, our customers, our competitors being affected by a necessity to downsize or reshape their operations in order to stay competitive or even just stay operational. Next, we have technology and AI. Again, not too much personal impact on Agreco and my team. We are definitely keeping an eye on developments in the AI space, very topical across the globe, across businesses, every sector trying to incorporate AI and trying to see how that could enhance their operations and efficiency. I'm a little bit old school. I still like to, read things myself, analyze things myself, draft myself. I really like writing. And to a large extent, I have really just kept up with the AI more on the side of research. So doing a lot of the groundwork for me, and then I'm able to extract that information and adapt it to whatever purpose I need it for. So keeping an eye. We've got a chatbot integrated into our systems, but I have not yet seen it be as disruptive within the legal space as it may be in some other departments or other sectors. But we'll keep an eye and we'll see how it evolves over the coming months and years. And then finally, climate change, very dear to my heart. I have a renewable energy background, and certainly for Greco, it is a strategic focus to pivot towards renewables resulting from climate change pressures. Unfortunately, the sort of broader African context has not been as advanced. And we are seeing, as much as we're trying to look for opportunities to bring in renewable solutions or greener solutions to our customers, the uptake is not as quick. Largely linked back to the economic instabilities in certain environments where you're prioritizing energy supply over sustainability. And naturally, with that, if there's a lack of demand, there's going to be a lack of regulatory progress and advancement in accommodating those new solutions. So this one is one I'd actually like to see more disruptive, and hopefully we'll see that with time, but probably going to be a bit slower across the continent. South Africa is a fantastic example of where it's working and where the regulatory change is coming in response to the uptake on sustainable solutions, and I hope to see a lot more of that growing and influencing the rest of the continent. And I guess in summary, across these disruptors, I think the key tool or way to manage these kind of disruptors, again, linking largely back to regulatory and political change. I think for legal counsel and their teams, it's critical to do constant horizon scanning. It really is a game of staying ahead of the changes and being able to equip the business with the knowledge and the information that's necessary to make the right decisions on whether you adapt or you don't. And we do that in combination with tools like Afriwise, where I've mentioned we get the daily alerts and we're able to dig in a bit deeper, but also the people on the ground. So whether it's our staff that are on the ground in continent, our sales team, our commercial team who are networking and keeping an ear to the ground, as well as professional advisors like local counsel who will alert us as to any incoming changes that may have an impact on our business. But certainly for me, horizon scanning is absolutely critical. You have to understand the framework that you're operating in when you enter a jurisdiction, but you do need to keep a constant eye because we've seen so much volatility on the continent over the last couple of months that horizon scanning is invaluable if you want to stay sane and functional within your role and the value add that you bring to the business beyond just a lawyer, but also a risk advisor and a strategic partner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. I must say you spoke about AI. I see that we've got a number of AI assistants as attendees today, so that's quite interesting. You see that more and more. I think, well, Anastasia talked about it, Cynthia talked about it, Pat talked about it. Regulatory change, volatility, regulatory complexity is really now come to the forefront. I think it's number 2 in the highest challenges. And I think this is really the reality we now live in. Africa is made up of 54 different countries with very, very different frameworks. I think that's important to underline. And regulation is now constantly evolving in every single country. And then on top of that, compliance requirements from a global perspective are becoming more complex by the day. So we thought it would be good to unpack that a bit more. And to address this, I'm pleased to welcome Godwin Amenyinu. Godwin is an in-house counsel at Intercon Security, an American multinational private security company. Godwin is also a previous lawyer who saw the light and went in-house. And very interesting enough, Godwin holds a PhD in business law. Godwin, it's good to have you. Welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Stephen. And by the way, I really appreciate the way you read my surname. It was perfect. Okay, thank you very much. I think Anastasia's topic gave me the perfect segue to address regulatory complexity and compliance burden. As it's shown in the survey, in the report, more than 53% in terms of our challenges are related to regulatory changes. And the main challenges here are related to what? The access to local laws is not always easy. You might find some on the internet. You might want to rely on local councils. And apart from the laws will also come the decrees, the ministerial orders, and also it's really sometimes pretty complicated, especially that we have to operate in a highly regulated environment. Also, like myself, who works in a multinational, we usually try to have the same policy that will apply in all jurisdictions. But there you will be confronted to realities that will change from one country to another. So we need to have access to the relevant laws. We need to have a process, a complete process to get access to all these relevant laws. And kudos to Afriwise. Afriwise has this very wonderful platform that help us get access to relevant regulations. And also, in general, we are in a situation when there's a overlapping of many regulations that can be applied to the same industries. So it's really a challenge to try to find the balance between all these regulations. Furthermore, when we'll have to talk about compliance, more and more we are talking about it, and it's I really don't know if we should see it as a burden. Of course, we did say it's a burden, but sometimes also can be an opportunity to grow, can be an opportunity to make sure that your business is being operated in the most perfect way, in the most effective way, by making sure that nobody will come and say, knock at your door and say that, hey, you weren't compliant with this or that, so you have to pay penalties. So for me, compliance, we should more see it like, some sort of light that we have to always have in order to read what's happening in the various jurisdictions in which we are operating. So it's basically in order to ensure that you have a business that is aligned with all the regulation that will affect the said business. So in general, for me, it's a burden in terms of knowing what to do. It's a burden in terms of having a process, having a modus operandi, maybe a procedures manual. But at the same moment, it's an opportunity for your business to grow. So I'll just try to keep it short that way. And in case, Stephen, you have any question, I'll be more happy to answer to them.
Great. Thank you, Godwin. And I'm sure the audience will have questions. I'm actually inviting you all to start putting your questions on the chat so that we can address them afterwards. Godwin, thank you so much. I think, yes, it's tough. We see at Afriwise as well. The hot topics are environmental, health, safety, ESG, again, also environmental, but corporate governance in there. And then data protection. The 62% that we see on the survey is not an eye-opener, data protection. And I think it's also got to do not just with, it's also got to do with kind of new players that are coming up. You think fintech, you think more of web-based companies that are starting to come up. So that's not a surprise. Okay, maybe a final thought from myself, and I'm going to kind of elevate it a bit on a more strategic level, because I'm so glad when I read this report. I'm less glad with the mental well-being and the stress and anxiety. That's not a nice thing to see that this is a significant problem we need to address. I remember when I did my MBA that one of the profs said, don't forget to ask your people sometimes generally, how are you? And I think that's something we really now need to start doing in the legal departments as well, asking how are you? Because we do underestimate the impact of all that stress. Now, I've spent over 2 decades working across Africa's legal and business landscape. I've advised in over 40 African countries. I've been engaging with regulators. I help legal teams navigate the ever-changing realities of operating on our beautiful continent. But along the way, one thing has become abundantly clear to me when I sit in those meetings with obviously CEOs, CFOs, but also the GCs, is that African General Counsel are no longer just legal advisors. This is something that happened previously in the world, in other parts of the world, but it's now come to our continent. We see that the General Counsel, also in Africa, are now at the very heart of business strategy, risk management, and corporate transformation. You see that in the survey, you see that when you talk to people. That's a good thing. But at the same time, it can be a bad thing, because do these GCs, do the legal departments, while they're actually now becoming so much more important, do they actually get the means to fulfill all the roles? And at the same time, you see in the research reports that legal teams are being stretched thinner than ever before. You are expected to do more with fewer resources. You have to manage increasing regulatory complexity. You need to expand your roles far beyond traditional legal work. I mean, we've spoken about compliance, ethics, government relations, ESG. I mean, you're all as in-house counsel taking on responsibilities that, if you think about it, could well all be separate functions. And yet, despite this increasing burden, many legal teams remain, comes out very well out of this report, understaffed, underfunded, and undersupported. So from where I sit, one question we must ask today, and I've done lots of strategic work in the law firm environment, but if I look at this, I think we really have to ask ourselves today is, where are we going? Because it seems to me that we are at crossroads. Just like I've been saying for the past 10 years that the traditional law firm model will not longer be sustainable. If I look at this research report, but also discussions we're having with legal departments, I believe that the traditional model of in-house legal teams being reactive, fragmented, overly reliant on external counsel is probably no longer sustainable. I mean, 56% of the GCs say regulatory complexity is the biggest challenge. 70% acknowledge that access to in-country legal intelligence is critical. Yet, very interesting, the same percentage admits that they are not using any tools to manage regulatory change. So obviously that creates stress. And that results in 53% of in-house legal department. That's more than half reporting that increasing legal demands are causing stress and anxiety. So I think several speakers have touched upon this. This is not just a legal challenge. I think Pat mentioned it. It's a business risk. And I think it's time that we use this report as a legal sector also towards the business leaders. Because business leaders need to understand that if companies want to survive and thrive in Africa's fast evolving markets, these problems need to be addressed. So I think this report tries to kind of show the realization. And I think with this acceptance, it's with this acceptance that things need to change, that transformation can begin. So that's why research reports like this are so important. And I think we at Afriwise and ACGC will do everything we can to kind of deepen this type of reports. So from where I sit, I believe we need a fundamental shift in mindset. And I'm not directing myself just at you, the GCs, but I think it needs to happen at corporate level, at board level. We need to move. The companies need to understand that legal departments are not just gatekeepers, but that legal departments are enablers of business code, and that budget comes with that, and that larger teams come with that. I've been developing over the past few months something like a nexus thinking, where everything comes together into a nexus. This was after a book I read, a very good book, Nexus. But I think this applies also to the legal profession in Africa. We are at an inflection point, and I think to move forward, we must break down silos that keep legal teams disconnected from business intelligence, regulatory intelligence, insights, economic strategy. So I really see silos. First of all, silos internally, where companies must stop putting their legal teams in a silo. And I think also the same applies for general counsel. Don't accept to be put in a silo. At Afriwise, for example, we see it every day. I mean, the regulatory complexity is a given, but we need legal data, but we don't have the budget. I see on the Q&A there was talks about budgets. Well, the legal budgets are so narrow and so narrowly defined, and then other budgets cannot be used for legal. Well, I think company leaders need to understand that, or start understanding that the reality is that law does not exist in isolation from business strategy, risk management, and economic realities. So silos within a company where a legal department is considered a silo with its own small budget, I think we need to overcome that. Secondly, and that's a big problem, I think as a whole, the legal sector needs to come together. We also all working in silos. You have the law firms, you have in-house counsel, you've got legal departments within countries that are all kind of mini silos with their own experience. And that's why I think the ACGC is so important, to share expertise, to share knowledge, to share experience, learn from each other. But then you also have, I mean, people like us, you've got legal tech providers. And I think what we need to do is, from a legal perspective, we need to come all together as sector participants and kind of become more interconnected. And then I'm talking regulators, law firms, in-house counsel, governments, data providers, tech companies. We need to start operating as part of a larger interconnected ecosystem. And I think that's why, for example, we like to partner with ACGC, but we need to, and we work with 180 law firms, but we need to bring everything together, because if you see where the challenges are, we all have part of this knowledge, and we need to open that knowledge to each other and kind of put that in an ecosystem. And then finally, I think it comes out as well, is technology. Technology cannot live in a silo, and it's also not a luxury. It's become a necessity. And I think the legal sector, in the broader sense, needs to embrace automation, AI, and legal technology solutions that enable smarter decision making. So I think, look, when I started Afriwise, we've known that legal knowledge is not just about having access to laws or regulations. That's the bare minimum, and it's actually pity that we're not there yet. That so many people, so many legal departments don't have access to that. But it's also transforming that knowledge into action, and that, I think Godwin spoke about it. Compliance is actually a good thing. But compliance, it's not just having a list of laws and keeping your finger on the pulse. It's really understanding what they are about and transform them into knowledge, a real knowledge, and then into action, and then actually become business enablers. Pat mentioned becoming a business enabler. I think we have the possibility to do this. So yes, from my perspective, the role of the GC in Africa is changing. The only question is, are we as a sector ready to embrace that change, work together, all of us, to become actually proactive architects of transformation? Because there are so many clever people in the room at the legal space in Africa. And I think we can do so well for the businesses to thrive on the African continent. And so I'm just giving that as a food for thought to all of you. Hopefully we can build bridges and we can work together to actually reduce that anxiety and actually become much more proactive. With that, I'm going to hand over to Nankunda, if Nankunda is there, for managing the Q&A. But I'm happy to, I think Nankunda is no longer on the call. Oh, there you are, Nankunda. Nankunda,
I'm going to apologize in advance because I might start coughing or something awful like that, but Cynthia's on standby.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm also on standby.
Excellent.
We've had a few questions. Well, I think there's not a lot of questions, but I'm going to hand it over to you. I think budget, there's something on budgets, and I know you've got some experience in that as well. So over to you. And
I can't actually see the questions.
They are in the chat, but there's very few. Well, there are a number of AIs that have reached their recording limit. That's interesting.
Yes, interesting. Yeah.
But I think there was a comment on budget.
Comment. Yes, that's right. And this comment came from Lindiwe Buthelezi, and Lindiwe says, in most instances, budget constraints are caused by lack of proper planning, which might be due to lack of skill by those at the helm. I thought this was interesting because that's it suggests perhaps collaboration with the finance departments is required in order to budget appropriately. And that goes on to the next point which she makes, which is about distributing funds the failure to utilize or distribute funds appropriately, which might in turn exacerbate corruption. There are a number of issues that are raised in her comments here. And she then connects it to alleviation of stress in the professional environment. So she's ticked a number of the boxes that have come up as highlights in the research. I don't know if Pat wants to say anything about this, or Anastasia. I don't know. I might be leaping all over the place and connecting things, but she certainly managed to connect them to various points raised.
No problem. I'm happy to chime in, and then Anastasia could also add her thoughts. Yes, thank you so much, Lindiwe. I believe those are very key concerns, and some of this actually did come up. You could have been a fly on the wall in our well-being breakout session at the ACGC forum last year in Accra, because this actually did come up. No names mentioned. But yes, the concerns, I think, in public sector largely revolved around, I think, in fact, it was interesting because we actually sort of concluded that it might not even be an issue of blind spots. And it might be more so, not of course painting a broad brush, but it might be more so people not wanting to do anything about it, or using information as capital or a trading commodity in some segments. So it was an interesting perspective to actually appreciate that it's not always that the executive management doesn't know what's going on. It may actually be a factor of, maybe a systemic issue. So you raise a good point. That of course becomes harder to resolve. But I think just continuing to plow through in terms of integrity and standing up for what is right, I think then, and being an influencer. And one of the ways to do that is to build your value as a solution-oriented provider, and someone who then is not always constantly focused on the problem, but is providing thoughtful, creative solutions. And then when you have that buy-in, you've built that social capital, then perhaps, then start influencing, slowly. And it's a coalition of the willing. You can then now, partner with other like-minded persons within the sector. But you do raise the conclusion around the proper management of some of these concerns. The budget constraint is a huge one. And like I said, I think it's also tied in with building a social capital, adding value. I remember, and there's a practical example. I remember being in an organization, and when it was discovered that we were differentiated in our service, and I think Stephen alluded to it, stop, working in silos or being fragmented, be up and center, be integral in your business. So after about a year, when the managing director was doing his walk around, he said, "How are you, Pat?" And I said, "I'm not okay. This is an operational risk waiting to happen." I had files all over my desk. And by the end of the day, I'm not saying it's going to happen like that every time, but by the end of the day, I had an approval for an extra legal officer. But I had to have the social capital first. I had to build the value before I was able to then address or have those capacity constraints addressed. It's still a work in progress. In every organization I've worked, it is a constant perennial problem, but we have to increasingly show what are we bringing to the table, able to quantify a value in monetary terms, and then, we start to see then the action to alleviate that stress. Anastasia, over to you.
Thanks, Pat. I think that was a very comprehensive and deep answer. I don't have much to add other than I think we all know that in-house legal and legal expenses are a grudge purchase for any business. We don't bring in revenue. We just try to prevent the leakage of the revenue. And so it is, to your point, Pat, you really have to show up in a bigger way than just a lawyer. in order for the business to really appreciate your value and your team's value. We often, I think, Stephen might have spoken earlier to the fact that we have to wear different hats, and so a lot of things land on our desk, even supporting HR, supporting the tax team, supporting finance, that wouldn't necessarily automatically fall within our role, but we are having to carry because it's adjacent to legal advice. And I think it's important to be able to contribute in a strategic way and to record that, document it, and have those discussions as part of even performance appraisals with your managers, if you're reporting to the board or you're reporting to the CEO or the MD, to show that you've either saved a lot of money for the business or you have added some strategic benefits, some value in terms of proactive steps that you've taken to guide business decisions. And the same goes for the team under you, because again, we're all squeezed. It's difficult to get any budgets for resources or tools, and it's difficult to motivate it. So I think we all have to build our case year on year to show the value we're bringing to an organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pat,
Can I just make a quick point on that, on your responses, actually, Stephen, if you don't mind? I know that there's this common theme about legal doesn't generate revenue, but legal does drive revenue. And if you have an effective legal function, it speeds up processes that are about revenue generation in terms of having the right templates in place, or the discussions with if the business is one that sort of either buys other businesses or invests in different sectors, the legal function does drive revenue. It may not in and of itself do that. And I think there's this kind of rhetoric ends up being said over and over again, and legal sort of feels slightly like we need to prove ourselves that we are actually doing something that's useful, but the value is absolutely massive. And I think it doesn't have to be seen in terms of, shillings and rand coming into the business necessarily, but it does come in because of legal. So that's just my little observation there. But over to you, Stephen.
Definitely. I think Pat wants to add something to that.
Yes, I've just seen a statement, but it sounds like an exhausted one, and I can relate with Sato and Abba, because he says legal is not regarded as an income generating department, hence its budgets are limited and seen as project stoppers. It's become exhausting to keep showing value add, and I can resonate so much with that, Sato. Maybe to just give you a practical example. So we had done, that value add for a very long time in my current organization, and then we got a new chief executive officer, and I can tell you, for me, it was exhausting to try and have to rethink how I was going to show this new person value. But one of the things I quickly adopted is to understand what I normally refer to as the what's in it for me. For that person. Tuning to the radio station of what's in it for me has helped, because this is a numbers person, and I had understood his background from doing a bit of, background work, and all he understands is numbers. So I know, yes, we're not income generating, but how do you show your value in numbers? So for instance, if you are part of, maybe like for us, we were part of the recoveries department, and we had maybe had discussions with the head of legal, for instance, at the distressed debtor, we'd be able then to say we brought in $2 million from this conversation we had, where this money has then come to the table. So you're not exactly income generating, but instead of relaying your value in terms of saving a legal case, and maybe you don't have the numbers to that, or you could, I think go for a non-traditional area of legal, because they might just say, well, you're hired to protect us from, being sued, for instance. But if you go to a non-traditional area where you're able to demonstrate that by your direct involvement, you are able to actually bring in, through, of course, partnerships with your business stakeholders, a certain quantum of value, then you start to get noticed. And actually then that's how we quickly then build social capital with this new person. So there are creative ways of showing that value. You just need to think a little deeper and a little more outside our traditional legal areas. Or even another quick one is spotting, and Anastasia alluded to it, spotting risk, but you could also do horizon scanning for opportunities. So these new areas that Afriwise and ACGC through the survey and the contributions have said these are trending topics. These are new areas, emerging areas. Are you able to put your business stakeholders in touch with the right people? And we're actually doing something like that in the carbon market space, where then legal is actually driving a trend and opportunities for new revenue. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat. I actually did put on the chat a few slides because this is a presentation that I've been running for over 2 years now, how to become a business leader. So maybe, Nankunda, we can set something up around that as well, a separate session. How to become from reactive, become a business leader, what is required for that. But what I really liked as well is what Pat said when she said to her boss, well, it's not okay. And I think that's something that is a big takeaway. It obviously takes guts to say that because we all kind of lawyers, we've got big egos and we're professionals and we don't want to say it's not okay. But sometimes I think that's a takeaway. If it's not okay, we need to say it because we do create, if it's not okay in the legal departments, then we do create an operational risk. So maybe, and that's my end, maybe I hope that this report can actually give you some ammunition with your business leaders internally. Take this to your boards, take this to your CEOs and talk about this and maybe say, you know what, it's not okay. And we are important. You don't want to create operational risk. So maybe become a bit more vocal. You've got the ammunition now to say, I'm not the only one. And with that, I would like to thank Jess. I would like to thank Cynthia, Pat, Anastasia, Godwin, Nankunda. I would like to thank the ACGC again, and I would like to thank all of you for attending this launch. And I hope that by now you've all downloaded the report, and I wish you a happy reading. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.